right, we're out here today working in the shade as much as possible because it's very hot and the boat won't fit in the shop very well. Got it hooked up to the Suburban. Pulled the last pieces out that I don't need anymore, which are these big Mercruiser exhaust manifolds. I might be able to use some of the fittings off of them. But the build just pretty much cleaned out other than stuff we're going to use, like that hose there and the power steering cooler and all that nonsense. So we've got the boat hooked up, and you can't tell, there's a motor hanging in a tree over there. So we're going to try to line these two up and get the motor setting down in the boat today. All right, we got the boat backed up under the tree, got the motor going down in there. It's kind of tricky because I'm out here by myself, but this makes it easier having a chain hoist instead of trying to use a tractor or something. So we're going to keep lowering this down slowly, and I'll turn the phone back on whenever I get it down on its little stands down there, because I just want to get it in here without tearing up too much of this fiberglass and knocking off all my pretty blue paint. After fighting with it for about 15 or 20 minutes, it's finally in. I did end up having to take off the manifold and the alternator / power steering bracket just because it wouldn't fit in there with the seat in. And I didn't really want to try to take it out because it's all kind of vintage and might fall apart. So I'll put the manifold and the bracket back on, get the motor mount bolts on, which are down there. I got that one started just so I could wiggle it while I got the other one going on. And then there's two big bolts that go down through the bell housing on the back side. And then that's the easy part done. Then I just got to figure out all the differences between the LS and the small block as far as plumbing and wiring and exhaust, which the exhaust looks like I should be able to just, if I can find a different coupler, I can get a 45 with a long end on it, and it'll just go right into those the Y pipe, and that would be really nice if I could find something like that. Okay, we're back out here on the boat. I'm back to the normal camera. Sorry if the last couple clips looked funny. I didn't film anything, but I got the exhaust hooked up yesterday. I just built a couple of little adapters because the Y pipe that comes out of the transom was too far forward, so I built a couple of adapters to go back and up a little bit. And then I've got some silicone 45-degree boots on there. They're supposed to be rated for high temperature and high pressure and all that. Should be fine as long as we got water in the exhaust. So today I'm gonna get all the, I still have the chain and stuff on here, but I'm gonna get that off of here, and then we're gonna start working on plumbing the water to the boat, because I feel like that'll be the next trickiest thing. So we'll get that all hooked up, and then we'll work on wiring up our MSD box. Okay, got everything cleaned off the motor. I started putting some fittings in. Got a 90 here. Got a 90 here with a drain, so I'll be able to drain the manifolds. Same on the other side. I'm just copying what I saw on a different YouTube video. So I'll put a link to that video up because he did it a lot better probably. So we're just going to keep going. I'm missing a fitting or two, but I think I have the old manifolds that should have the fittings I need. And then I have to drill and tap the water pump so I can run the steam vent into that. And yeah, we're just going to keep going. The only difference is on the one I saw, he didn't show his power steering cooler, which I have over here, and I'd like to keep that in line, so I'm going to have to get an adapter because every hose I got is 1 inch, and that seems to be about 1.25 inches. So we'll get some sort of adapter figured out for that, so we can have our power steering cooler still operational. And then yeah, once we get the wiring, the coolant done, then it'll be the wiring's turn. Okay, I've spent more time today going to try to find parts than I have actually working on this. So this is what I've got done so far. I'll try to walk you through what this is doing, and this is just me copying what other people on the internet have done. I'll put a link to the channel where I got the first coolant routing diagram. I did it a little bit differently because mine has a power steering cooler. So my drive, the water comes in down here on the back, and I'm running around the front of the motor. Just go over here. coming in down here, I'm going through my power steering cooler. Then I necked it down to 1 inch because that's what size everything else is. There's a T here, so the fresh water coming in goes to this manifold, and then it tees across to that manifold right there. And there's also drains made into those, so I can drain the motor in the wintertime. So then after water goes in here, it comes out right here, and those are teed together again. And water will come down through here into the thermostat. Preheating, I guess that preheats the water before it goes into the motor. Motor heats up the water. Once the thermostat opens, water comes out here and goes to this back port, which dumps water into the exhaust. Now, to keep the exhaust from melting these couplers before the thermostat opens, there's this bypass line that goes in between. So as water's coming out of this hose before the thermostat opens, water will go through here into this and then out. But this has a piece of 5/8 heater hose in the middle just as a restriction, so that once the thermostat opens, more water will go through the motor than not. So that's it for that. Next thing I'm going to do is drill and tap the top of the water pump so I can run my steam vent into there. All right, so got a little more work done. I got the alternator and power steering bracket put back on. Got the power steering lines all ran. The factory boat pressure line threads right into the pump on the LS. This is like an 87 model boat, I believe, so that's nice that it threaded in. I just ran new return lines from the return line here into the power steering cooler, and then it comes out of the power steering cooler and goes back over to the steering ram. I did have to solder the nipples back on that thing because they had broken free, and that would have been a water leak. So all I'm waiting on now is a coolant temp sensor that'll go in the back of that cylinder head, and that will give me a gauge on the dash, so I'll know how hot it's getting. And then once that's in there, I'll put the coils back on, because once I put the coils on, it'll kind of be in the way of putting that sensor in. Got my oil pressure sensor in, so we need a serpentine belt and some wiring, and we're getting real close. Okay, we made a little progress since last time I pulled the camera out. I think I showed I got the wiring hooked up here. I've figured out that this blue wire is for my oil pressure gauge, so I got it hooked up to my sending unit, which might not be right because when I turn the key on, it still pegs the gauge like it's just going straight to ground. This is a ground wire. That's what tells, that's for the volt gauge. So I got that grounded up here and it's working. And then I have the tan wire, or at least it's supposed to be tan, maybe it used to be 30 years ago. That's for the coolant sensor, and it's plugged in back there and it's working. So also I have the battery hooked up back there. It's a big one. When I turn the key on, all the gauges move. That one bumps right up to 100, which maybe is right because it's like 95 degrees out. The power trim goes all the way up, which it's all the way up. Battery voltage 12 volts, fuel gauge 3/4 of a tank, and the oil pressure just pegs it at 80, just like when you touch it to ground. So I might have the wrong sensor in there. I'll have to look into that and check back. But also the blower and the bilge pumps are working. The horn, oh, the horn is working now. It wasn't working earlier. That's kind of crusty, but the lights and stuff are working, so everything's going together. Getting ready to put the carburetor on probably next, or maybe I'll put the MSD box in here and figure out a place to mount it while I still have all the room, because once the carburetor's on there, it's harder to get to the back of the motor and stuff. So we'll see what's next. Okay, we got the MSD box mounted to the back of the seat because I figure that way it won't get vibrated and it shouldn't get wet there unless something's really wrong. The wiring all reaches. I'll have to tie this wiring. I'm probably going to just run it up and tie it to the back of the seat also, just to keep it out of the way. Got my power and ground that I need to run through a relay, and then all my inputs, which I'll only use, I think it's the gray one, whichever one the tack is, because I'm not going to have two-step or nitrous. So gonna get the relay out, figure out where to mount it. Probably just right over here somewhere, also on the back of the seat, just so everything's easy to get to. And then run a wire with a fuse to the battery over there in the corner. And we should be all set on the ignition box. Once I figure out which wire here is ground, and I think this is the one that went to the negative side of the coil before, but we'll find out. I'll look it up. And then after that, we'll just get the carburetor put on here and we'll almost be ready to get this thing fired up. Okay, I got some wiring done. I think it's right. We'll find out. I've got the box here wired into this relay for power and ground. I'm just going to cut this wire off because it doesn't do anything. These are my extra wires. That's for the two-step and the nitrous, whatever they do on these. The gray wire is tied into this little loom here, and that's for my tack. That runs across here, where we've got our purple wire hooked in, which is our 12-volt source that turns the relay on, and then the ground is in there too. And then we've got our, or not the ground, that's the tack. The tack is in there. The two grounds, the ground for the box and the ground for the relay, are right here, and they go over to this valley bolt here, which, don't worry, there's no paint underneath the bolt. It's all clean. The only wire I have left to hook up is this wire here for the alternator. That needs to go to a 12-volt switched wire, I believe, with a resistor or something in it. And then I've got the ground wires for the coil packs on both sides, but those are going to have to be wired through this switch here for the shift interrupt, but that has to be moved around. I'm not quite sure how to do that yet, but it needs to be, instead of only breaking or only making contact when you shift, it's going to only break contact when you shift to cut the coils so that it'll come out of gear. But yeah, so we're moving right along. Just need to figure out where to put this wire for the alternator, and I'll have to Google that, which you'll probably you'll probably Google that too, because there's a lot of people that have already done this swap. All right, got the carburetor put on. Looks good on there. Don't mind the fact that I put the fuel line on backwards the other day when I had this on the table. I'll switch that around. I don't know if I showed it, but I've got an electric marine fuel pump mounted down there, and then it's going to run into this water separator, which I need to get a new filter for, and then it just comes out up here. I'm probably going to remount this. I'm going to mount it up to this tab so it's not quite so close to the floor, because right now it's kind of close to the floor. But yeah, we're going to get that mounted there and then run our fuel line, and we're getting really close to firing this thing up. But that's going to do it for this video, because I haven't had a video out in a while, and then all I've got left is a couple little wires to hook up. So the next video, hopefully we'll have this thing running, or at least we'll be trying to start it. But thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.